Today on Disrupt for Good, we're joined by seasoned criminal defense attorney Jason Russo, partner of Gateman and Russo. He's a lawyer who's spent almost 3 decades advocating for justice in federal and state courts across New York. Jason began his legal career as a prosecutor, where he never lost a trial and later transitioned into defending individuals facing some of the most serious charges imaginable. With experience in hundreds of cases and a deep understanding of how the legal system operates from both sides, Jason brings a unique perspective on justice and the real human impact of criminal law. Welcome, Jason Russo, to the podcast today on Disrupt for Good. We're honored to have you on here. He is my dad's partner in crime, so you can say, in law. They both are criminal defense attorneys, and I wanted to have him on here today because he has a great perspective and great experience within being an attorney and being in this particular field. And I know so many people out there aspire to be in law, so I think it'll be great to hear his perspective and his journey within this incredible field. So we're really honored to have you on today, so thank you for taking the time.
My pleasure, Dylan. It's great to be here on this Sunday morning. It's a little gray Sunday morning in New York.
Yeah, I'm fortunate enough to have some sun here today, which I'm very blessed to have. So I hopefully in the next few weeks in New York, we will get some sun back, because I know this winter's been brutal. It's been nonstop.
It has.
So I want to start our conversation with really where it all began for you, which I know your journey began as a prosecutor, which I think gives you great perspective within your industry. So before you became a defense attorney, you were a prosecutor. And what really inspired that transition, and how has your background as a prosecutor shaped your work defending clients?
So I did start as a prosecutor out in Suffolk County. However, I always knew before even becoming a prosecutor that I wanted to ultimately be a defense attorney. I went to the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office in particular because at the time in the late 90s, there was a district attorney there who was a great trial lawyer himself and was breeding and training young prosecutors to be trial lawyers. That was what his reputation was. So I got out of law school. When I was in law school, my whole goal was to be a trial lawyer. I wanted to try cases. And the criminal defense world is where you get the most opportunity to be in a courtroom and trying cases. So I went to the DA's office really to get the experience. And I did. My first year as a prosecutor, trying low-level crimes, misdemeanors. I did tons of trials, hearings, got used to preparing a case, presenting a case to juries. And that's really where I honed my skills. I did that for a couple of years, and then I was ready to make the leap to become a defense attorney, which was what my goal always was. It's funny, my first job as a defense attorney, I got that job because the district attorney, Jim Catterson, found the job for me. I went to him to discuss my career, and I let him know that my goal was to be a defense attorney, and he made some calls for me and found basically a firm that was looking for a young, motivated trial lawyer. And 2 weeks after that conversation with my boss, I was in a new job as a defense attorney, working in New York City.
That's incredible. I think a lot of the messages when I speak to some of our guests is that you really need to build that foundation when you are trying to pivot or start in a new career. You should try different avenues to really figure out what really suits you best, and building those relationships, whether it is in the sector or part of the career that you want to be in, no matter what, is so invaluable. So I think having that mentor and having that particular person to guide you and get you into the doors that lead you to where, or led you to where you are today, is incredible. So that's awesome.
Yeah, it's great.
So looking back now, was there a particular moment early on in your career that made you realize that criminal defense was your calling? There's some people that I know that are friends of mine who are still try to figure out what path of law they're looking to get into. But for you, was criminal always the path that you were looking to go into? Because there's so many different segues into law that you could really enter into as an attorney.
Yeah, criminal law was the field that I chose because, as a criminal defense attorney, everything that you do takes place in a courtroom. Um, Even though I'm sitting in my office here on a Sunday doing some prep work, um, I'm in court every day as a criminal defense attorney. Um, your your clients are required to be in court. I do a lot of trials. I'm talking to juries. I'm running around from different courthouses. It's exciting, and the type of work I wanted to do. I didn't want to be sitting behind the desk all day doing paperwork. That's not what being a criminal defense attorney is all about. It's about making arguments, getting up, going, being in front of different judges. Personalities of judges are all different, so you have to manage those situations. Prosecutors are all different. You got to manage those situations, and it's exciting work.
That's me.
I started out in New York City as a defense lawyer when I left the Suffolk County DA's office. And I quickly had to learn. I went to jurisdictions and places I'd never been before working for that firm. I had cases in the Bronx, I had Manhattan, Staten Island, Queens, where our office was. And it was exciting work. My first case that really grabbed me as a young defense lawyer, where I knew that this was what I wanted to do, was a case I had. His name was Samuel Brownridge. When I met Sammy was in his early 20s, and he had already been incarcerated and convicted of murder at the age of 18. It came to me. I had a friend of mine ask me to get involved in this case because there were some witnesses who came forward after the conviction to exonerate Sammy, and Sammy had no money, and I took the case on pro bono. It took me almost 6 years to vindicate Samuel Brownridge. I worked with the Innocence Project, and I got some other lawyers to participate, and we worked pro bono, and we were able to prove that Sam was not the killer. We actually were able to identify who the actual perpetrator of the murder was, and it took 6 years. He did almost 9 years total in jail for a crime he didn't commit.
Wow.
And what I uncovered in that case was really the most egregious, ineffective assistance of counsel. Sammy's trial counsel just should never have been handling that case. And what I learned from that experience of working on that case is how important the role of a defense attorney is, and how careful and diligent you really have to be when you're dealing with people's lives. I mean, he was sentenced to 25 to life. He was going to do the rest of his life in jail if myself and my colleagues didn't do what we did to get him out. So that's really what grabbed me as the first real case that I recognize the importance of the kind of work that your father and I do.
That is really moving, and it's very important for people to also hear that, because people now out there like Kim Kardashian, and there's some celebrities right now who are trying to do some important work, which I think is bringing some light into this specific industry, which I think is great. And it's wonderful that you are shedding light into that as well. People sometimes don't get it. They're like, why are you and people like you and my father who are in this industry helping out people who are criminals? And I think that it's really amazing to also understand that some of these people, first of all, didn't commit the crime, but second of all, sometimes deserve a second chance, or maybe you don't have the full story or the background knowledge to really get the full understanding of what or how they got to where they did with the crime. So I think someone like you who can really articulate that in the courtroom, it's so important to have someone like you on their side to display or to really demonstrate that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people and the public in general don't really understand a lot of times what the role of a defense attorney is. Dylan, I can't tell you how many times I get asked this question, Jason, you know these people are guilty, you know they did it. You know, how do you defend these people? And it's really it's it's disturbing that people really don't understand our system of justice. That somebody is not guilty just because the government says you're guilty. And a lot of times, your father and I represent people that are clearly guilty. We represent people all the time that tell us we committed the crime. Help me.
Right.
And really, what we're helping them to navigate this system is to get treated fairly in the system, to protect their rights. There are two different ways of looking at guilt. There's factual guilt, somebody's actually guilty of what they did, and there's legal guilt. Are they guilty under the law? And the government always has the burden of proving somebody guilty. And a defendant always has certain rights. So the role of a defense attorney is to ensure that the system is working properly, that the government is doing their job and doing it the right way in getting their convictions, and is the gatekeeper to protect those rights of these individuals. So I try to explain that to people when they say, "Oh, I don't know how you sleep at night, Jason, when you represent this person," and it's not. We never judge our clients, never. It's the rights of these individuals that always need to be protected, whether they're guilty or not. That's how the system works, and um, I've had that mindset since the day I started as a defense attorney. My mentor, when I became a defense attorney, was the partner that I worked for in the first firm, and he really drove that point home. That you're going to meet some people that are accused of doing some heinous things, that have done some heinous things. We represent people who are charged with murder, with rape, very serious crimes. Um, and what you have to remember is these people have the same rights as somebody who may be entirely innocent and wrongfully accused,
Right.
and that's really your role. And I take that, real serious.
Yeah, it is. It's something that really needs to be taken very seriously. And I think people sometimes don't really understand that perspective. So I think it's really important for others to hear it through a lawyer's lens, because otherwise they really don't get it. So I think it's really wonderful that someone like you really can articulate that. I want to talk about the law a little bit and some of the past cases you've done as well. You've litigated over 100 federal and state cases. Are there specific types of cases that have challenged you the most or that you find especially meaningful in the work that you do?
Yeah, a couple of cases come to mind that I've handled over the years. Our firm handles mostly serious criminal cases. Anybody charged with murder, rape, thefts of hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars sometimes, DWI cases, fatalities caused by drunk driving. So a couple of cases come to mind that were particularly challenging, and quite right. One of them, very recent case that your father and I handled, with a 65-year-old grandfather who was accused of murder when he got into an accident on the Long Island Expressway with a motorcyclist. And very simple, the allegation was that this was a road rage situation, and our client purposely drove his truck into the motorcyclist, decapitating the motorcyclist and killing him. Um, from the moment we got the case, it just didn't make sense. It didn't add up. That this man who had never had a contact with the criminal justice system his whole life, on a Sunday, driving on the Long Expressway to go take his wife to a bridal shower, would get into this road rage incident with somebody on a sport bike and purposely and intentionally kill them, which is what the allegation was. What we were able to do, and this was actually the first time we utilized an accident reconstruction specialist. We had the most wonderful, prepared, experienced accident reconstruction firm get involved in the case. Was able to download kind of the black box from the truck, go and photograph the truck and do a whole analysis. And it was with that scientific evidence we were able to prove that the motorcyclist actually went into the truck and caused the truck to veer off to the left. It was fascinating work. And all this was presented to a grand jury. And just about a week ago, the grand jury voted what's called a no true bill and dismissed all the charges against this man. He was charged with intentional murder, facing a life sentence. And the work with the accident reconstruction people, it was so interesting. It was fascinating. We learned a ton. And we got a great result. So that's a recent one. As a young defense lawyer, another case that I had, a case of, and I say his name all the time, Eric Rodriguez. Eric Rodriguez was one of the first real serious cases that I did as a young defense lawyer. I had been a defense lawyer for maybe about 1 or 2 years, and I came across Eric Rodriguez, who was charged with a very serious rape, and he was facing a 25-year sentence. Eric had a very bad background. He had been involved in the criminal justice system before, and the judge had set an extraordinary high bail on this case, and he was in custody, and he was going to remain in custody during the case. We were able to track basically the woman who had accused him of this rape. We were able to work backwards and show that, in fact, the sexual contact that she had with our client was consensual, and that she had a motive to lie because she had 2 relationships going at the same time. And in that case, there was DNA evidence that was collected, a specimen that was collected, that was tested, and I was able to use a DNA expert to show that there was multiple samples of DNA in the specimen to show that she actually had sexual relations with another person at or about the same time that she had sexual relations with our client. And we went to trial with the case, and jury found Eric not guilty. She had no credibility, but it was a case that we worked again tirelessly on to get the scientific evidence. So it's those types of cases, to answer your question, those types of cases where you're using experts and you're learning about DNA or accident reconstruction. Those are the most fascinating cases.
Yeah.
And the most meaningful. Yeah.
It sounds like you become an expert at reading people. You become someone who's an advocate, but also someone in this business, as I've watched my dad and yourself, who can really see if the client themselves is credible or they're lying straight to your face. And it's worked either against me
Dylan,
as a kid.
You learn in this business, everybody lies.
Yeah.
Everybody lies. The clients lie. Witnesses lie. The judges, the prosecutors, the cops, everybody, they're human. So people lie. And you really have to learn to read people, because it's anything from body language, and just common sense tells you a lot of times,
Of course. And it's all in the best interest for themselves. They want to, protect themselves, which is understandable, but at the end of the day, it's going to bite them in the ass. But I heard that story. What's ironic is I had dinner with my dad about a week or 2 ago when I was home, and my dad actually shared that story about the 65-year-old man. And I love hearing these types of stories because whenever I'm in the car, I'm usually faced with hearing my dad on the phone with clients and stuff like that. It's inevitable because he's always on the phone. And so for me, I take pleasure in that because it's always so different than what I'm used to in my day to day. And, if I have a friend in the car or someone like that's a visitor or a guest, they always find it so fascinating as well, because it's something that no one in, my day to day life typically gets to hear also. So that story in particular, also I left, feeling, that it was a really great outcome as well. I think it speaks volumes to the work that you guys do, and also the different resources that I think are at lawyers' disposals. You know, I think that maybe technology has something to do with it these days, but it's incredible that now there's so much out there that you can now utilize to get to those outcomes, which is great.
Yeah, it's you really have to be like a jock of all trades. You know,
Yeah.
you have to know a lot, a little about everything.
Yeah. And what's also great is I think for your job, it's not just a 9 to 5, sit at your desk, do the same thing over and over again. I think what's great is that you're constantly learning, evolving, and getting to, have your hands touch different things. And, there's certain stories and things that we're not going to go into today, but that I'm aware of that I've never heard of, or things that, I'm sure that are once in a lifetime type cases that you'll probably never touch again, but are so interesting and fascinating. And that's what I think is so great about your line of work, is that it's always evolving and so unique. So it's great.
A lot of fun.
Yeah. When someone is facing serious charges, you're not just representing one person, you're dealing with parents, spouses, children. So, how do you navigate working with the family, especially when emotions are high? I've seen it myself when I'm with my dad. I've gone with him to work before. I love it. I love watching him in the courtroom or in those dynamics in the office. But specifically, how do you deal with those challenging dynamics with those families who can be sometimes intense environments with their loved
It's a great question because a lot of our clients are incarcerated because they're serious crimes they're being charged with. A lot of times, our point of contact is the family, the friends, the loved ones, who a lot of times have never experienced the criminal justice system. They don't understand it. The key, and this is something that your father is the best at, the key with uh, families is communication. You've got to be available. You said something a few minutes ago. You said my father, he's always on the phone. We're always on the phone. We're emailing, we're texting. We have group messages with family members. Communication is key in managing families, managing expectations, but keeping them informed. You see, the biggest complaint that I think lawyers get is my lawyer, you can't get in touch with my lawyer. He doesn't call me, he doesn't speak to me, he doesn't let me know anything. And people are in the dark. Our clients are never in the dark. And I said, your father's the best at it. Communication is key. Um, and you have to, a lot of times, be a therapist to people. Um, you have to care in this business. If you're going to be successful as a defense attorney, you really have to care. If you don't care, you shouldn't be doing this. And caring means listening to people sometimes and hearing their stories and letting them cry on your shoulder. You know, being that shoulder for them to cry on. And they don't teach you that in law school. It's empathy is something that's very important. And your father and I think, are particularly good. And I think we're both successful in this business because we take the time to sit with family members. Today, I'm here on a Sunday morning. I had two families come, one with an existing case, one with a new case, to come in on a Sunday and sit with people and just to hear what they're going through and to help them through it. It's a very important part, but it really comes down to communication and being there for people when they need you.
Yeah, I think especially this probably is, if not one of the most difficult moments of their life that they're going to be going through. So having that person to hold their hand and basically give them that sense of it's going to be okay, and that message of we'll get you through this, and having that person like you or my father, I think is so important, because who else is going to be there to really give them that type of reassurance? So that's really wonderful that you guys add that type of value to the cases that come along. So it's great. In your experience, what are some misconceptions people have about maybe even just the justice system and how it really works? We went into how there might be misconceptions about criminal defense attorneys specifically, but what about the justice system in general?
Yeah, so unless you've been involved in the system, you really don't know how it operates. Um, so today, family came in. They don't understand why a judge in their loved one's case set bail in the amount that they did, as high as they did, because they say, listen, um, my loved one is going to show up in court. We're not running from this. We're going to defend this. Why we've lived on Long Island? Why do we need to have such a high bail amount? Why does my loved one have to be in jail? He's just accused of this. So explaining, and trying to educate the public on the purpose of bail, which is just one aspect of a case, and getting them to really appreciate why a judge would set bail on a very serious case in that amount. Um, there's misconceptions. We do a lot of jury trials, your father and I. And to get jurors to understand a very basic principle in criminal law is that a defendant not only is presumed innocent, but the burden of proof is with the prosecutor. People don't have to prove their innocence. They don't have to prove they're not guilty. Alternatively, it's the government and the government alone that has to prove. So jurors a lot of times will say, well, if the defendant doesn't take the stand and tell me his or her side of the story, I'm only hearing one side of it. How can I decide this case? Because they really don't understand the system, that the defendant never has to testify. The defendant never has to prove their innocence. But on the contrary, the prosecution has to prove it. So getting people to really appreciate and understand that and sit as jurors is a challenge. And it's one of the things in jury selection on all the trials. Last year, your father and I did 10 trials last year. So we're constantly picking juries and educating people while we're doing these trials to say, listen, you're not likely to hear from our client because we don't have to. That's the biggest misconception I think I see. Every trial I do, I have jurors who think that the defendant has some burden to prove their innocence, and that's just it's just completely wrong. It's not our system.
Just out of curiosity, you said jury selection in there. What do you look for in a juror when you are selecting a jury? Is it specific to each case, the jurors that you're looking for, or is there a specific recipe to the type of juror that you're looking for? Like, walk me through that, if you will, on how
So
that.
there's some general things that you always look for in any juror. Obviously you're looking for people who can be fair, impartial, that keep an open mind. Um, but some cases you want different types of jurors. You might want younger jurors, older jurors. You might want men. You might want women. It really depends on the facts of the case. In every jury trial, when we're doing jury selection, there are people who just don't want to be there. And they're going to give you answers, whether they're true or false, just to get out of jury duty. I let those people go. I'm not going to fight with you to be here. If you don't understand the importance of your role as a juror in these very serious cases we try, then I don't want you to participate. You don't want to participate. I don't want you to participate. So I want people that understand the importance of the role, can keep an open mind, and not just, a lot of people walk into a court. They know who the defendant is sitting next to us, right? They know they're in a criminal court. They know there's the prosecutor, there's the defense attorney, there's the defendant, and they come in thinking, well, if he's arrested, he must have done something wrong. So I always explore that with people and say, can you follow the instructions to presume him innocent? Because a judge is going to tell the jurors at the start of every case that they must presume this person innocent throughout the entire case, no matter what the allegation is, until such time as they find, based upon the evidence, that the prosecution's proved the case beyond a reasonable doubt. But some people just can't. My own mother says that she wouldn't be a good juror because she thinks the police don't arrest innocent people. And she would never be on a jury because that's her strong belief. It doesn't matter what some judge tells me I have to do. I believe the police don't arrest innocent people. And if they're sitting in a courtroom, they got to be guilty of something. That's the way she thinks. So those are the people we don't take. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all, I think it's all strategy. It really is. Like, you got to really play the game to figure out who best fits the name of the game and the strategy a little bit and the narrative.
Yeah, I'm on trial right now with a drunk driving case where one of the issues in the case are some field sobriety tests. And they make the person walk and turn to see their balance and everything. And the test is called the horizontal gaze nystagmus test. They test the eyes. When you put the pen in front of the eyes and they go like this to test. So I have on this jury, one of the jurors I took was an optometrist, an eye doctor.
Brilliant. That's brilliant.
And because I knew it was going to be an issue. I knew that going into the case that the trooper messed up this test that he did and wasn't going to be able to answer the questions properly. And I wanted somebody educated in this that could follow. So I was lucky when I was interviewing this woman. I said, "What do you do for work?" As I asked many jurors, she said, "I'm an eye doctor," and I was like, "Perfect."
Yeah.
And I put her on a jury, and I think she's going to be a great juror. I think she's going to get what my arguments are going to be. So that's paying attention to what people are saying. Also, really listening.
Yeah, and that seems like it's also a little bit strategy and pure luck in a way, because
Yeah,
you
definitely.
don't know if she's going to be sitting there that day, so it's great.
Exactly.
What trends have you noticed in criminal defense over the last 20 plus years, whether in policy, technology, jury perception, or in the prosecutor's lens, their tactics? Anything that you've seen different?
The biggest change by far, the biggest change from when I started in the law game to now, body cams, videos. When everybody who walks around, everybody in our society has a video recorder. Everybody has a cell phone. Everybody has a video recorder. But now, I think about 5 years ago, with the advent of body cams, all the police departments around the country are using body cams now. So that's the biggest massive change in the criminal justice system. It has been so effective from both a prosecution and a defense point of view. It's the use of body cams really was brought about to have accountability between the police department and the public, and to say, listen, we want to trust our law enforcement agencies, and what better way to trust them and to see what's happening out on the street on video. So that's one thing. Evidence collection. Prosecutors a lot of times, it's very powerful evidence for them when they have a video of the crime caught on an officer's camera. This case that I'm trying right now is a drunk driving case. The evidence in this case that's captured on this camera was actually helpful to me, because the officer is claiming that my client had slurred speech and was unsteady on his feet. And he's on camera, and the video doesn't show that. So it's wonderful. And I'm using the body cam in this case more than the prosecutor. So that's the biggest real change in our system that I think has benefited. It's helped get better plea bargains, both for the prosecutor and the defense, and really help resolve a lot of cases.
Yeah.
And make the public more, I guess, confident in the criminal justice system.
Yeah, and I think I think it also brings some more awareness to maybe the situation, so that it's not just a he said, she said situation. At least there's some more awareness to what actually took place and transpired, and having that accountability to the complainant and then actually the person that you're defending. It's really a great segue to have that footage, and the technology out there is really great. So that's a really great takeaway.
Yeah.
For someone considering criminal defense as a profession, what personality traits or mindset are absolutely necessary to survive and thrive in this particular field?
So, as I said earlier, and I'll say it again, you really have to be an individual who cares about people. You're the subject matter of what we deal with as criminal defense attorneys. It's not money. It's not some intangible item. It's someone's freedom. That, anytime we're representing somebody, whether it's a misdemeanor or a serious felony, our clients are facing incarceration, lack of freedom. So you really you really have to be dedicated. This job is not a 9 to 5 job. So if you think you're going to be a criminal defense attorney, a successful criminal defense attorney, and work a 9 to 5 job, it just doesn't happen. You have to be there 24/7 for your clients if you're going to be effective and successful. Um, you have to have an open mind. You have to have a dedication to continually learning. Um, I've been a trial lawyer for almost 30 years. I still take the opportunity when I hear that one of my colleagues may be cross-examining a police officer today or something's going on in the courthouse. I'll take the time to sit and watch somebody else's trial to learn. You're always learning. All lawyers take continuing legal education. A lot of lawyers just do it to get the credits they need, and they take various things and they don't really pay attention. They just go through the motions. I don't do that. I take very specific continuing legal education classes on trial advocacy, right? Because I'm a trial lawyer. I want to learn the latest techniques. I want to see what's going on, how this lawyer's doing it, maybe can do it better than me. I take things from all the other colleagues of mine that do things. I make my little change to it, or I do it exactly as they do it because I thought it was effective. So you really have to have a mindset. Somebody going into this field, you're never done learning. You're never done honing your skills. You could always do it better, and you got to have that mindset.
Yeah, and I think in any field, that's the type of mentality that sets any person who's successful apart. And also going out in the field and having that field work experience to really watch your peers and take away what was something that worked for them and what works maybe for you, and you know, taking parts that maybe would best suit you and what you can take away from that is so amazing. I also think that what sets you apart, and maybe I'm biased, is the fact that you care so much to be the best that you can be in the field. So it's really remarkable that you cared that much and care so deeply to continue your education and to devote that much time into it, because there's some lawyers out there, people like doctors, whoever it is, who can just say, my experience can just speak volumes, because I know you've been in the business now for almost, 30 years. So you could just say that that's my reputation and I don't need to really do any more to really give myself any more credibility. But the fact that you're giving yourself even more of a push and a leg up to learn more in this day and age is so incredible for your clients and for yourself. It benefits everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after almost 3 decades in the system, what keeps you motivated? What still makes you walk into court ready to fight for your clients and really go after it for everyone that you represent?
So listen, it's a very rewarding career. Financially, it's very rewarding. I don't see, when I wake up in the morning and go to work, I don't see it as like Monday mornings don't bother me. I look forward to going to work. I don't see this as work. It's what I do to make a living, but I do enjoy the challenges that being a defense attorney bring. I love being in front of people. In college, I was an acting major. I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be out in front of people. So having the opportunity every day to get up in court, deal with situations, and it's different every day. There's all new experiences. You're constantly being thrown curveballs and you have to react to it. I like that part of what I do. I like the fact that when I walk into court, sometimes I have no idea what's going to happen and I'm going to have to think on my feet. It's challenging. I like the challenge, and I enjoy it. So it keeps me motivated. Every day there's a new case. Today, sitting in the office, I have a new case that came in today that with a whole new set of facts, a new client, new family to deal with, and a new situation. And it motivates me. I'm here. And when we're done with this podcast, I'm going to continue doing some work on this new case, getting it all lined up. And tomorrow, hopefully another one comes in and another one, and it just keeps going. And that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, and it's incredibly rewarding to really work with people, and it's fulfilling to achieve those outcomes and to really help them through these challenging times, which I think is so amazing with the line of work that you guys
So
do.
Dylan, I'll tell you about one particular case that comes to my mind when you say about helping people, I represented a gentleman who, from the time he was a young boy, he was in foster care, and he was committing crime even as a teenager. Had been incarcerated. He was in his mid 40s when I met him, and he was charged with some very serious crimes that he was clearly guilty of doing. There was a murder, there was a sex crime, there was a kidnapping, and there was a terrible series of crimes. And this man had been in jail almost his entire adult life, and he was facing the rest of his life. And I represented him at this trial, and there was no way to win this trial. The evidence was overwhelming. But I fought for him, and I defended his rights and represented him. He was actually a very quiet, humble person that I met during this very heinous case. But after he was convicted, and he was rightfully convicted, and he got a life sentence. He's still in jail to this day. He'll spend the rest of his life in jail. He turned to me and he said to me in earnest as he shook my hand, and he said, "Thank you, Mr. So." I was stunned. I said, "Thank me. You just got life. I just lost your case. What are you thanking me for?" And he said to me that he's been represented by lawyers his whole life. He's had so many problems his whole life. And for the first time in his life, someone stood up and fought for him and defended him to the best of their ability. And he was just thanking me for being that person. And it really puts things in perspective, about what you do, that it really is about defending those rights. And this guy recognized that and saw that I did that for him and showed me appreciation as he went off to serve the rest of his life in jail.
And it's also the fact that someone in your position is taking the time to, regardless of the situation, the facts, the circumstances, any which way, will still fight to the end to get them the best result possible. And also, you guys work with people who do crazy things, whatever it may be, and you still look at them and treat them with the utmost of respect and the same way that you would treat any individual in any capacity. So it's that also that I think that I would say that that client probably appreciated as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you never know unless you walk in somebody else's shoes what their life experiences are and what found them in the circumstances they're in. There are some particularly evil people out there that just do evil things. But your father and I, we don't judge anybody. It's a judgment-free zone here. And we are here just to defend those people's rights. And we make it clear that there is no judgment,
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you today for taking the time, Jason. This has been such a treat for me to hear more about the work that you guys do and all the examples of the cases that you have put your hands on. It really shows the amazing care and the rewarding experience that you have had with this profession. I have loved every minute of this time that we've had together on this podcast, and I'm excited for our audience to hear more about what you guys do. So thank you, and good luck with everything.
My pleasure, Dylan. It's great being here with you today.